Are you ready for another the metal silver squeeze? Based on some new reports, it could happen very soon. As we look about, let's discuss about it in this video, and one metal might be to blame for it. It's right there in front of you. Before we dive too further into this, I want to go over some basic rules regarding what the silver squeeze and shortage are. There are numerous sorts of silver squeezes. There actually isn't a lack of silver in some markets. That's something that has always been true, even during the first formal silver squeeze movement in 2021 and 2022. But there are situations when the supply chain doesn't work right. We have seen that happen before. We're seeing it happen now, and we saw it work well in China. And China is also a little bit behind this. But partly because of the war in Iran and the restricted strait, and what's going to happen there will also have an effect on this. So when you think about the supply chain, that's where the problems might happen. In a way, it's a lot like oil. You know, crude oil is fine. There is a lot of it all over the world. But there can be a scarcity since it needs to be processed and sent to where it needs to go. That's one of the reasons why prices go up. Silver can also do the same effect. And right now, we might be in another position where silver prices could go up because there isn't enough physical silver. I'm not suggesting that it will happen soon or that it will happen at all because the market is unpredictable and based on feelings. But this is one of those strange cases that could be important to report on here. I'm going to talk about something Mike Meharry wrote about this scenario. It's very intriguing, especially what's going on with the tight silver supplies. One reason China is limiting silver exports is because of this. We've already talked about that. And I believe that is what is keeping the price of silver high in some way. Don't get me wrong, the price of silver will be quite unstable for a time. We're witnessing big changes in one direction or the other. Think about those choices before you go to any bullion dealer. But I'm here to tell you to check out the channel sponsor, Summit Metals. They have a great assortment, low prices, great customer service, and rapid shipping. The link to Summit Metals is at the bottom of this page. So, if China does something, it might make the already limited silver supplies even tighter. Chinese officials have said that they will stop sending sulfuric acid to other countries starting next month. The prohibition might last until the end of 2026. It doesn't make logical that we're talking about sulfuric acid right now. Well, come with me on this journey since mining.com says that certain sulfuric acid manufacturers in the country recently got word of the move. According to those who know about the situation and wanted not to be named because they were talking about private information, one big buyer has been warned about it by their Chinese supplier. People, such words are really essential. You know what? I'll stop there because you should always question anonymous sources. This could be a bunch of nonsense, in other words. But it's possible that word has gotten out. And this might be true. But when there are sources like that, it may be that it isn't true, or it could be an exaggeration, or it could be a stretching of the truth. So it might not be as horrible as people imagine. But if it is something, it's still something to think about. But you're still not sure how this relates to silver. Sulfuric acid is a very important part of copper mining. To get the copper out of the crushed ore, miners pour acid over it. That's why you may see copper on your screen right now. A big lack of sulfuric acid or even rising pricing could affect the amount of copper that is made. By the way, we can already see a symptom of it. Copper prices are going up again. As I write this, the price of copper is close to $6 a pound. They're still going up here, but not many people are talking about it. Now, copper isn't silver, so why would we talk about copper? The reason is that 70% of the silver mined each year comes from copper production. We also know that silver is mined as a byproduct of lead, zinc, and gold. But 70% of it comes from mining copper. That is deep. I had no idea it was so much. This means that silver really needs copper and sulfuric acid. Philip Streibel, the head market strategist at Blue Line Futures, summed it pretty well. Less copper mining means less silver production. And that is really the case. The turmoil in Iran has cut off supplies of sulfuric acid around the world, and prices have gone through the roof in the past several weeks. The Middle East makes roughly a third of the world's sulfur, but the Strait of Hormuz has been closed, which has made it harder to export it out. Mining.com says that the strain will affect the copper mining industries and important producers like Chile, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and Zambia. That's a major thing. Reports say that China will stop exporting the acid to protect its own supplies. Does that ring a bell? They're doing the same thing with sulfur as they are with some silver exports. They need sulfur to mine their copper and silver. Wow, that's really cool. So this is really interesting news. Mining.com quotes an acid analyst as saying that it will be hard to make up for the loss of Chinese volumes because there is also a lack of sulfur feedstocks. Some experts think that even while there seems to be some movement in ending the disagreement, the damage to the supply of sulfuric acid has already been done, and China will probably keep the export ban in place for a long time. That is an example of deglobalization with just one good. This is happening in other places also. The US is also becoming less global. We've talked about this channel's topic of deglobalization before, and this is one of those times when it's happening. At this point, the silver supply is already under a lot of stress. In 2026, demand for silver is expected to be higher than supply for the 6th year in a row. This is because physical investment offtake is expected to rise by 20%, but also because there is a general lack of supply for industrial demand. According to early figures from the Silver Institute, silver demand was around 95 million ounces more than supply last year. This was the 6th straight market deficit, including previous year's shortfall. The 5-year market shortfall will reach more than 800 million ounces, which is the same amount of silver as is mined in a year. If there is more demand for silver than what mining and recycling can provide, people have to use stockpiles that are above ground. This generally requires higher prices to incentivize those holding silver to release it into the market. They did it like crazy, all the way up to $121 an ounce. This is why a lot of local coin merchants won't buy any kind of constitutional silver from you. I just got a piece that I want to show you. I'm going to show you just a little bit of it. Yes, I'm going to do another video to describe this piece, but it is 90% silver. Because there is so much of it in the refineries, many local coin stores and even big bullion dealers won't take constitutional silver. And of course, that means that it's being worked on. Now it's going to take them months to catch up. That's another place where they're feeling the strain because of issues in the supply chain. The Economic Times of India says that ongoing supply shortages have hurt above-ground stockpiles. Over the past few years, stocks in the COMEX, London vaults, and Shanghai have slowly gone down. This has made people even more worried about how hard it will be to get actual goods. Over the past 5 years, the London Bullion Market Association vaults have lost over 40% of their holdings. In the US, COMEX registered inventory are down almost 70%. But keep in mind that even while there are shortages in those markets, we know they are mostly paper markets, and that will never really be tested. That's why they didn't crash when they anticipated they would at the beginning of March. They can merely transfer it around because it is in the eligible and registered categories. When silver sells on the COMEX, it's basically a warrant, which is a piece of paper that says, this silver now belongs to these institutions. So with that in mind, Shanghai's stockpiles are at their lowest level in 10 years. I have also talked about that on this channel. The lack of metal was one reason for 2 recent silver squeezes that pushed the price above $100 an ounce. Speculative purchasing in the futures market also played a role. It's not obvious how China's action would affect copper mining and silver production, but it's definitely something to keep an eye on. It is another thing that is making silver shortages last longer. Yes, this is something that may happen. It might become worse, and copper and sulfuric acid might be to blame. Really interesting. In fact, really interesting. Please leave a comment below to let me know what you think about this. I work hard to give you the most up-to-date news, information, and analysis about precious metals. If you like what I do here, I hope you'll subscribe to the channel. And I'd like to thank each and every one of you for taking the time to watch. Please rate, share, comment, and subscribe.